Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Imou Ranger IQ. Now this is a full HD indoor camera that has a swivel functionality and motion detection. It can be found in the UK for around £85. If you live in the UK or indeed elsewhere, the locally link in the description below will take you to your localized Amazon store. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, a quick look at what you get inside the box. You've got the camera itself, you've got a wall plug. You can see it's currently connected with a micro USB connector, and yes, that is all included in the box. In my case, I've got a UK wall plug. You've got a mounting bracket because you can mount this up. If you're going to mount it and therefore have it positioned this way, you will want to flip the image because or else everything will be upside down, but that's pretty easy to do through the app, which I'll showcase in a bit. And then you've got these warranty information and quick start guide. Now in terms of the camera itself, it's got a glossy look. It's got a black glossy exterior. You can see it's quite reflective. You can see me in the background with my tripod. Then at the back, you've got an Ethernet port, RJ45, if you want to connect it up. This is wireless. It's got 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz capabilities, so you can connect it up to your router pretty easily. You've got a reset button, and you've got a micro SD card slot. It's actually quite hard to access unless you have the plug disconnected. You will need to buy a micro SD card if you do want it to be storing via local storage. However, you can also purchase cloud storage if you so wish, but I haven't done that, so I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that in this video. You can see over here there's a little LED, and in terms of the camera, it's currently concealed, but if I unconceal it, you can see there is the camera, and that's how it looks like. And I'll show you how the camera performs in just a bit, but first off, let's go into the app. So here is the Imou Life app, which I've got running on my Android smartphone, which is the Galaxy S10 Plus. Now, the app is pretty comprehensive. It's got a lot of options, and I'm going to try and go through them as best as possible. But I do want to mention a few things. First off, let's talk about the received notifications. Now, the received notifications was an actual big problem for me, because the fundamental principle of a camera, specifically a smart camera, is the fact that you're going to get notification instantly when there's any sort of detection. You can see over here a detection was picked up, and that was literally just a second ago, just before I started filming. Now, the issue over here that I found is that I didn't have notifications for about a month of using this camera. I reset the camera multiple times. I uninstalled the app several times. I logged out of the app and logged back in. I had it running on a separate smartphone, and even after asking Imou customer support, which told me, it might be a setting on your phone, which I could confirm it wasn't, it just suddenly magically started working, which then prompted me to do, well, this review. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is that it might be a localized problem, however, it could be more of a widespread problem. I don't know what the issue is, but I do want to point this out, and I really do want to make this clear in this review that it is a problem I had, and it was a fundamental problem of the camera, because without notifications, there's somewhat no point of having a smart connected device that's going to work with your smartphone. So notifications aside, let's move on to the rest of the app. Now, before going into the actual camera settings, you've got a few different tabs over here. There's tabs over here, you've got system info, and then you've got personal push. In other words, you can see what the camera has picked up, and you can see over here, you'll have a different list if you've got different cameras set up. I've just got the Imou Ranger IQ, so therefore it's only showing that camera there. But if you had multiple cameras, then it should show different streams. Now, in terms of your settings, in terms of your own personal settings, you can configure this. Now, if I go into my device, it's going to go basically to the main screen, which basically takes me over here, which is more in-depth settings, which I'll get into in just a bit. If you go into download list, it shows you what you've recently downloaded. Local files, as the name might suggest, I've got rid of every file at the moment. It's on my computer, and that's because of tests. And then you've got geofencing. Now, this is the one that I've got a particular problem with. I'm not going to press it because you're going to see my location, but nevertheless, the geofencing feature over here simply didn't work. No matter how hard I tried, and I compared it with my Nest cameras, the geofencing one just did not seem to recognize. You can see right now I'm still receiving notifications even though I am at home, and the camera is registered to pretty much my address or the locality of my address, and yet the geofencing just does not work. What geofencing should do is that when you're at home, it shouldn't give you notifications, and when you're out and about, it should then give you notifications. Unfortunately, this camera just basically either refused to give me notifications, as I mentioned before, or constantly gave me notifications. Now, it's worth mentioning that in the More Service tab, you can connect this up to Alexa and Google Home. I don't personally use those services, but if you do, then you might want to use that. In other words, you can access it via your voice assistant and therefore say, hey, show me my, I don't know, backyard camera, then it'll show you your backyard camera. Other than that, you've got the settings tab, and you can see over here there's some more account settings. So you get account and security, and this is the push notifications which I was mentioning before. You can see that they're on, and then you can set a period as to when you want it on or off. And also you might want to make sure that your phone's settings are also enabled when you're doing that. And you can also clear the cache, which is great to see, and of course play or disable on cellular network. Now, moving back to the home page, we're going to go into the actual camera settings. Now, the camera settings, they come in two different modes, which is a little bit confusing in my opinion. First of all, you got this this screen, which seems to be like kind of a quick access. You can mute an alarm, intercom, in other words, speak directly with someone with the camera via your phone, and it works pretty well. And then you can also switch modes, which enables you to have home, away, or, you know, disarm methods. And then you can also set the settings per each of these locations. Now, this might seem pretty intuitive, but then it gets even more complicated when you hit the settings button, and then you've got an even more detailed list of the device settings. So it somewhat seems that this mode is kind of like a quick access mode, whilst this one is more of an in-depth one. And to be honest with you, you're going to want to go into this mode because it is very much fundamental in terms of how you want the camera to be running. So first of all, you've got firmware. You can update to disable the firmware. In terms of features, it just tells you what the serial number is, firmware version, and what the features of the camera are. In terms of the alarm settings, you can customize this as much as you want. Now, I haven't got a hub of cameras or Imu's other products, such as like the alarm or the motion sensors, but if you do, then you can enable that via the hub mode, and then you can have kind of like a home security solution with the camera included. Now, in terms of notifications, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to enable these. It's pretty fundamental, but you can also disable them if you so wish through the app. Now, next up is the arm settings. So over here, you can enable or disable any of these, and they're pretty self-explanatory in terms of motion detection, human detection, smart tracking. You can set a schedule if you so wish to have it running or not running a certain time, and also the sensitivity. So I usually had it on 3, and I found it to be pretty well, but if you want more or less, you can do that as well. Now, finally, in this setting menu, I do want to mention the detection region setting. Now, this mode is useful if you're going to have your camera pretty static, and the reason why is because you can set a region as to where it records. You can see right now the camera is moving. Hopefully it kind of picks me up, but basically if you're going to be having the camera smart tracking, then this region is kind of going to be negated. Now, for example, if I were to set this region as to not to record and save it, then it will be applicable if the camera was steady. But as soon as I start moving, or the camera starts panning around, if it's going to pick up, that would be great. Then this region kind of gets negated because that's the region that you set initially. Now, I did check with Imou that yes, this is a feature that you will want to be using if the camera is steady, but it doesn't really work well when it's used in conjunction with the smart tracking ability. But anyway, it's good to see this, and you can really customize it per square. You can see how accurate that is. So for example, if you were recording outside and you had like some people's buildings and some people were on balconies, you can basically disable those certain areas. So it's pretty good and pretty intuitive in that respect. Now, next up is the alarm sound setting. Now, again, I don't have an alarm to link it with, but if you did, then you can link it with a certain accessory and therefore have it run alongside with the camera. Abnormal sound alarm. Now, this is basically, as the name would suggest, alarm message and recording are generated when abnormal sound is detected. Now, that is completely up to you if you want that. Personally, I don't need that sort of setting. I'd rather it just pick up on terms of motion and sound, generally speaking. So anyway, that's completely up to you. Now, next up is the smart tour function. Now, this feature didn't really work out for me, and to be honest, I haven't seen anyone really demonstrate it in a good way. They've just mentioned it, but haven't really commented on terms of its testing, which I find a bit odd. But anyway, what I found is that the smart tour function just didn't really work. By that I mean, what the function is supposed to do is that it does kind of like a pan around your room and just does like a sweep. And you can set a different time period. You can see I had it pretty much on midday of every day, just to test to see if it worked. What would happen, however, is that the camera would just do a full 360 and then kind of get stuck in the wrong way. So for example, if it's facing me this way, it would be facing that way afterwards. And that would somewhat defeat the point, because after it's done its kind of sweep, then it wouldn't be facing the direction I actually want it to do so, and it would be facing the wall and therefore pick up absolutely no motion detection and therefore give me no security. Then it's pretty simple in terms of the storage ones. Now you can see I've got cloud storage unactivated. I've got local storage. Now you will need to format your local storage. I've got a 64GB micro SD card in there. You can pretty much use any sort of micro SD card. I didn't feel that it had any sort of requirements as such as to you have to run a class 10 micro SD card. Then you've got local storage settings. Here I've got it to store pretty much everything, and in terms of the quality it does, it will refresh, so therefore if it fills up the micro SD card, it will delete the older recordings. So again, worth bearing that in mind, that if you do have recordings that you do want to save for any reason, you might want to check out your storage every now and then, depending on how much space you've got left. And again, you can do that through the app pretty easily. Now in terms of the device settings, the camera shielding is pretty much as it says. Now if I press it, the camera is going to hide itself, and the reason you might want the camera shielding, or let's say the microphone disabled, is simply because you do want somewhat of a privacy. So you can't have this not record when you're at home. So for example, in comparison to the Nest camera, which stops recording, or at least so we are told by Google, stops recording. In this case, this will continue recording unless you manually hit that camera shielding button. So that can be also accessed through the menu over here, right there, the little button there, and it basically disables the camera from recording. Now, when you do have camera shielding enabled, as it might be pretty obvious, but I thought to check with Imou anyway, but essentially you will not be able to record, and the camera will not be recording even if there's sound or anything like that. It just won't record. So worth bearing that in mind, that if you do want privacy, you've got that camera shielding, and it's nice that they've actually integrated it into the main interface over here, rather than having to go to the settings like so and then go over here to enable or disable it. You can also enable or disable encryption. You can also share the device with another person, and you can also configure it with your certain network that you've got. You will need to do this pretty much as soon as you get the app and / the device, so it's worth bearing that in mind. So now let's go into a recording test for you guys, so you see how the actual camera looks like. So now we are testing directly from the camera. Everything you can see right now has been recorded in HD via the app over here. And also then being downloaded straight from my smartphone to my computer. It's recording in full HD, 1080p, 920 by 1080p. So I just wanted to show you the audio quality as to how it sounds, so you can see I'm talking relatively normally, not a really high pitch or anything like that, and also my room is relatively quiet. Now in terms of motion tracking, as I move around, the camera will follow me. But it's worth bearing in mind that when I start moving a little bit faster, as you can see right there, the camera somewhat struggles to keep up. Now the issue is over here is that if I was a robber or a thief of some sort, I wouldn't be taking my time and going to something and picking it up. I'd be pretty quick. And if I'm pretty quick, the camera struggles to keep up. And that, to me, is one of its major flaws, that even though it is quite an AI-based camera and it has a swivelly head, is that ultimately, if I'm going really quickly, it's going to struggle to keep up with my movements, and ultimately that might defeat the purpose of the camera, specifically if you're using it to, let's say, track outdoor scenarios where someone might be running across your garden or your patio or something like that to get to your house, even though the camera is placed inside your house. Just worth bearing that in mind, and this is from my experience of the camera itself. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview as to how the camera looks like, but yeah, anyway, let's get back into it. Now while we're here, I also do want to showcase the SD setting. So this is running at 640 x 480, so definitely a downgrade over full HD. The reason I want to point this out is in case you do want to run it in SD mode, and you can probably see that the quality isn't as good, it doesn't look as sharp, and there's a lot more pixelation in the background, and therefore if you're going to be running this in certain scenarios, you might find it's better to run it in HD. So that's pretty much the SD test, and hopefully that gives you somewhat of an idea of how it might look like. So there were my HD, SD and nighttime quality test, even audio recording. Personally, I found that the camera does a really good job in all those modes, and it does well throughout the different settings that I had. Now, in terms of if I would recommend it, and in terms of its quality, in terms of its price and all of that stuff, well, for me, the motion detection could be a little bit better. It could be a little bit better in terms of detecting fast movements. But is that going to be a real issue in your household or even outside your household? Probably not, because the speed that I was moving at was pretty much full pelt running. Even though I was in a small room and moving around, if that was the case, if you're in placing the camera in a certain way, someone would have to move really fast for the camera not to actually track it properly. And even then, you've got the wide angle, which should cover a certain degree of motion, at which point that's going to be enough evidence for you to know that someone's in the house, or let's say you can call the police because you don't feel secure or something's there. Now, in terms of its notifications, I did mention this before, this could be a localized issue. The thing is, I've never had that sort of problem before. With other cameras I've tested and from other devices, I've never had to install an app multiple times, reset it several times, and even try it on multiple different devices, only for it to then magically start working. I have no idea what the issue was, and I can say that the problem with its notifications are one thing, but then the geofencing feature is completely another thing, which really refused to work. And even though I've got all the right permissions set through the app, and the app has got full access to my phone's location, and I've set the location through the app, it still wouldn't pick up, at which point when I was out the house I was getting notifications, when I was in the house it was just driving me insane because I was constantly getting notifications when any sort of movement was happening. I just wanted it to stop doing that and stop giving me notifications when I was in the house. And unfortunately, as you probably saw on camera, that wasn't quite the case. So should you buy the camera? Well, to be quite honest, it does well in a lot of different categories. But fundamentally, in terms of notifications and also in terms of its way of dealing with geofencing, they were pretty poor, to the point where I actually stopped using the camera and just had enough of it, because it was either giving me too much headache with its notifications, or the fact that it just simply wasn't picking up when I was out the house or in the house, which is fundamental for me for a camera in 2020. Specifically one that costs around £85, that's a lot more than some other cameras out there. And granted, those other cameras might not have the amount of features that this camera has at this sort of price range, but ultimately, fundamentally, a camera should give me notifications when I'm out the house and not give me notifications when I'm in the house, and it should be smart enough to sort of distinguish between the two. If it can't do that, then sorry, I can't see myself recommending it. And ultimately, that's my opinion and that's my review of the camera. Of course, your mileage may vary. Let me know in the comments below if you own a camera of any sort, or this video may maybe give you some sort of insight behind it. I'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts. And of course, subscribe, favorite, and share, like, and all that good stuff to continue helping the channel grow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care, and bye-bye.